Hello everybody and welcome to the second week of the Project Zomboid Architect series. The series where I bring you all of my TileZ, WorldEd, and Building Editor isometric constructions from Project Zomboid. So this week I decided to work on a lot of post-apocalyptic terrain, but when the incident was taking place. So anything around the time of the zombie apocalypse. I made a bunch of military tents and just sampled in a bunch of what I thought would be refugee camps. Turns out that the resources are actually pretty limited. I also wanted to go with some really high standing walls, just trying to make something that looked like the military put it up really quickly. Unfortunately, you can't actually do 2 layers of fences, so I might have to do custom tiling, and I had to substitute in with bricks. I also ran into a weird problem here where in the WorldEd screen, you might notice I'm playing around with these. The bottom tiles keep rubbing each other out unless you put them in certain spots. Kind of weird. A lot of problems like this I'm negotiating as we go. Another one here is that you can actually have Z levels in Project Zomboid. So I started making a house on a hill, but I sort of had to put one layer of hill underneath the rest of the house. So it would... it was halfway on a hill and it had a weird den. This house was just kind of an experiment though. I wasn't really, I don't think any of these really came out exactly as I wanted them to. I don't have the patience for it a lot. I've been transitioning from work this week, so I'm I don't really have patience for anything. So I've just been doing whatever feels good. A lot of these I wanted to make, and I just didn't do any interiors for pretty much all of them. I kind of hate doing the interiors still right now. It's not really my forte. Oh yeah, and you have to weirdly block off the rest of the hill with fences. Otherwise, people could just walk through the hill because they count as roofs, and you can't actually walk up them. Anyway, kind of unusual, but definitely kind of gratifying once I got the whole thing going. So here I am placing in some of these houses. That one I wasn't really happy with how it came out. The next one was a metal shack, something that looked like it would be part of a shanty town that had come up after the entire event was over. So that one was super fast. And then I just spent so much time going through room and tile definitions. This one was actually, I thought, a really creative idea. I tried making one of those arched Middle Eastern buildings that you would see around, I don't know, Egypt or anywhere with Arabic influence. So yeah, I just tried to make it really open to show the desert terrain. I think it came out pretty good. I'm happy with it. A lot of the tile sets are from the Sunstar Motel, so yes, it is all vanilla. I'm just trying to think of a map that would go along with this. I saw a multiplayer server that had used Wild West terrain. I thought that was pretty fun. Turns out that none of the railings really go along with this place. I can't find cement railings that go along with these, so I just stuck with that for now, until I at least get the custom tile sets going. Here I'm actually making my own custom hillsides so that I could just speed up the whole process. Once again, I still don't know if I'm doing any of this right because I haven't even tried loading any of it into the game, which is, well, that would be really horrible to find out that all your work was for nothing later on eventually, but it's been rewarding nonetheless. Just another random hill, a room with a window in it. I don't know, just trying to provide some sort of terrain variation and coverage. So I put that there. Just trying to break it up. Still, a lot of these buildings don't really go together, but I figure. At one point, I did start to think about how am I going to make more uniform buildings. So I went with a 10 by 10 grid for this one. This is a city apart, just a shitty apartment building in the city. Really ugly brick, but I figured that it would be on the other side of the street. And I'm trying to make, at least make an effort to make kind of more cookie cutter buildings like this, just so that I can place them all together eventually. It went pretty well right now in that, they will be interchangeable, and I will hopefully have a set of buildings soon that I could just use for any kind of project. But I don't really get as much joy out of making buildings like this because you have to do all the rotation. There's really no automation in the TileZ and WorldEd software. So for right now, it's just making the same shitty building over and over again. But, you get through a few of those, and then you make a building that's fun, and the whole thing kind of comes together. The next building I was really excited about. It was kind of like one of the ones that I had seen a user by the name of Restai Philip, who made a really, really cool warehouse that was like a gardening shop. But I decided I wanted to make a big warehouse where people would store weapons. So I pictured IKEA warehouse room, except with everything is armaments. So anyway, I set up a couple guard buildings. It's very, very much like another building I've seen. A lot of this is not my idea. I see a lot of other people's ideas. But I pictured that there would be like max security at the door. Yeah, I put in a couple of garages so that big truckloads would be able to come through. And then after that, I started going off to work on the shelving. So the shelving was the main feature of this room, but I figure that everything is going to have like weapons all over. And I even put up to the second level. I don't really know any way to access those right now feasibly in the game, but I'm sure somebody will get creative if this were ever actually put on a map. And then I put all around the outside a bunch of lockers. And then I thought, well, this place is starting to look not so crappy, so why not make it look like a really modern facility? So I started putting in skylights. I started putting in like more modern looking roofing. I considered making the entire roof a skylight, but I kind of held off because that didn't really sound very useful for the people who worked there. Anyway, after that, I decided that the sides looked good enough with the kind of like cobblestone siding. Not really cobblestone, just, I don't know what it is. They use it in houses, very fancy houses, expensive houses. And so I put in a few more skylights, and there we go. That was actually one of my favorite buildings to make. After this, I got kind of tired of making buildings, so I did just a couple more. I can't remember. It was just a lot of searching through menus. Oh, yeah. I had seen a memorial in Boston. I don't remember what it was for. But yeah, I thought it looked cool, so I decided to just make a big glass memorial and just put that down somewhere. Pretty much every idea that sounds like fun that crosses my mind, I just do right now, because I'm getting a lot of ideas. Put in fencing around. This is supposed to be like military fencing, but I ended up making a custom tile set for this, which actually is what I'm doing right here. I tried my hand at custom tile sets, so I'm using a program called Sprite, which turns out maybe not to be the best editor for these tile sets. Specifically isometric tile sets, which are just really hard to negotiate. But I did try going into one of the native Project Zomboid textures and just seeing if I could shade it, make something that looked relatively decent, which did not end well. Anyway, I know a little bit about some of the shortcuts in here, but it turns out Photoshop is probably going to be a much better software than Sprite. But anyway, here was my attempts. I kind of went through a lot of naive attempts to create a fence, just drawing bars over the whole thing. And then I kind of gave up on one angle, so I used another one. But then eventually, once I crossed them and I zoomed out, I didn't even think that the whole thing looked that good. Like, I think it looked terrible. Because I started zooming out, I was like, okay, what would it look like in the game? Tried text. Just like, little simple things. Can I make a really dumb tile set that's very simple? And then eventually I did start to try working with, other filters and things like that you could just get quick results from. Also, one thing that turns out to be really useful here is just changing around a lot of the filters. Or editing original tiles in the game just to make them look a little bit different, because making an entirely new piece of furniture kind of doesn't look like the rest of the art style of the game. It's very hard art style to replicate. Actually, one thing that I threw in that I just thought was random but fun was working in Blender. I've been trying to model some of the weapons in the game, or just try to make like random things as a test. Can I use Blender to make models at all? And even though that I'm incredibly not proficient at Blender, I'm probably the worst Blender user ever. I've hardly ever even used it to begin with. It was kind of gratifying learning experience, and it's always good to just go in and try to make something even without any knowledge of it, just to see what you can do. So I got about part of the way through a Scar L right here, and I just decided, not for me right now. I got to get way better with Blender before I do this. But I did manage to make a skateboard the other day. Anyway, this is another lab. I've been seeing a lot of scientific labs. One by a user named Snake. whose terrain I really, really love. I'm going to link his work here because this is almost an exact replica of something that he made. It's like a lab that he was working on, but I just thought that it looked so cool, I wanted to remake it. Anyway, thanks for inspiring me with that. More buildings here. I'm honestly, like, I'm struggling for ideas at the moment because I got so much on my mind with work. But I'm doing whatever seems like gratifying at all. Messed up my fire escape floors. And then we go on to the last structure. Actually, this one was one I really had wanted to do for a long time. It's a huge building. But it's based on a lot of what I've seen in, like, gentrified neighborhoods. Like, they'll put in some modern building project like this. And I haven't really been working on the interiors at all. Just the exteriors for now, because I hate interiors. I put in a skylight, tried to vary up the building's, like, architectural layout, threw in a little bit more dimension on the side, and now it's actually looking broken up. You got to try to keep things from looking too blocky, you know? I mean, in tile, if everything is tile-based, it's gonna conform to a blocky look to begin with, so you have to fight that all the time to make everything look decent. Otherwise, it just looks like a bunch of boxes. Threw in tons and tons of windows, just filled up this place with light. And then, oh yeah, all this work on symmetry too. Finally started to add in railings, but I still felt like the whole building looked kind of dead, so I needed to add some greenery. So here I finished these off. I think that these are actually, like, these railings are pretty versatile. They're not the exact same color, but you have about 3 color choices. And then I started adding green. Which this was really my favorite part, and even though it doesn't really match a lot of the rest of the Project Zomboid art style, I think the entire tile set lends itself to this. And I took another idea from Spazman, just putting trees randomly on cement. So there you have it. Honestly, the whole thing was, this one was probably the most enjoyable one to make. And anywhere where you can't really get the tools to do what you want them to, like with that glass pane right there sticking by the roof, you just kind of make some new artistic choice, which I think it turned out pretty well. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks very much for watching. If you want to see more like this, come join our Discord. We're talking about this all the time. Ultimately, the plan is going to be to take all of these custom ideas and then put them into our new server. So if you want to join that, the link's below. I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know if you have any feedback or commentary. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next architecture vid. Thanks.